Oshiomole. I represent the good people of Edo North from Edo State, where my Lord, the acting Chief Judge, did our NYC. Like everybody has said, sir, no one will look at this CV and want to ask questions. And I thought that for those who are in doubt, this training is not an act of favor or punishment. We just want to be enlightened as to have a window into the way in which the mind of the next Chief Justice of Nigeria works. So for Kalu, I needed to understand that we are not doing her any favor by saying, take a bow. In any case, that has been settled. I just want to ask one or two questions. You know, my Lord, when we complain of crowded court, the courts only adjudicate based on the judicial confined on it by Parliament. For example, when my case went to court as a governor or governorship dispute, the law then was that cases are terminated at the Court of Appeal. The National Assembly, in its wisdom, chose to remove that bar and say the cases must now terminate at the Supreme Court. So we can't overload the vehicle and then blame the driver for carrying overload. But there are a couple of issues that I believe many of us distinguished senators must be aware of. That depending on the party you belong, at the level of the state judiciaries, people tend to prefer, talking about forum shopping, to file cases before Federal High Court, particularly if it's a case in which you believe the state governor or the state government may have an interest. And how we deal with this, how the Chief Justice of the Federation can encourage judges in the states to show the same level of courage to pronounce where it's so discovered that a state government or a state interest, a state governor has crossed the red line, that people should feel able to go to a state high court and get justice, and not want to rush to federal high court because of the fear that judges, in many cases at the state level, don't want to enter judgment that will be offensive to the state executive. That is recently in the state, and for obvious reasons, I won't mention the state. The National Judicial Council approved the appointment of new judges, which is in line with the Constitution. But the state governor in Benin decided, I didn't mention him, I mentioned a city. A state governor in Benin refused to swear in. Excuse me.
You are protected. You did not mention the state. You only mentioned Benin.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Benin is not a state.
That's right. So, as we speak, those judges were not sworn in, even though they have been cleared by the National Judicial Council. When I was a governor, sir, there was a case, a judgment against the state government. But because the governor has immunity, the judge decided to sentence, to convict the Attorney General for contempt of court. So I'm like, if a state governor disobeys a ruling of a superior court, and because the governor has immunity, there is nothing you can do, I would have expected that the Attorney General would be charged for contempt of court or showing disrespect to the National Judicial Council, so that the discretion we exercise should not be abused to the extent that all of the processes that the National Judicial Council goes through to select and approve and forward to the governor for ratification. I am sure, Mr. President, you approve many such recommendations, not necessarily because you like the persons, but in the wisdom of the National Judicial Council, they've cleared them. So I thought that there might be, like to know how whether a legislation is required or the Supreme Court, being a policy court, what it can do to help to curtail abuse of power at the level of the state. And lastly, there was this case of Mr. I don't know whether I should mention his name, a guy who was sentenced to 3 years in prison, up to the Court of Appeal. And the Supreme Court found that this was a criminal case that has to do with somebody who operated or officiated at the, I believe, MPA. He served all of the 3 years in prison. And then the Supreme Court found that he was wrongly convicted. The only benefit he's got is that he cannot now be referred to as a convict. But he suffered the punishment for 3 years. In such cases, where the lower court has misapplied the law, and a citizen has been sentenced to prison and served the whole of the 3 years, or even 5 years, is there a way in which the Supreme Court can order compensation for victims that suffer such humiliation for an act for which they were never guilty? And each time I see the guy on television, I wonder how he feels that he was in prison for 3 years, and the Supreme Court found that he was wrongly jailed, and yet he has suffered it and there are no compensation. I would have imagined that the court can award compensation, huge compensation, not the type that is not even enough to pay the cost of a senior advocate, but one that will also fairly compensate the victim for the period he spent in jail wrongly. Thank you, my Lord, and I also want to congratulate your family, because having seen that you serve in virtually all the jurisdictions, north, south, east, west, that means that for most of the time, members of your family were alone. And so for you to accomplish this, I think members of your family deserve commendation as well. Thank you, Mr. President.